If you have seen the first part of this manhwa, then you can skip 21 minutes. This is the story of a boy. He is a cartoonist. He works hard day and night to earn money, but one night he dies while working. And he gets reincarnated in a fantasy world. And then a system opens in front of it, which is a task of the self-discipline system, and the system asks the boy if he wants to activate the system, and the boy activates it. Because in his previous life, his life was very useless. And he has a second chance, so he doesn't want to spoil this opportunity. And the system gives a task to this boy, which is to insist on declaring your love to the goddess that everyone knows for 99 days and 99 sentences every day. If you successfully complete this task of self-discipline, you will be rewarded with 1 marrow cleansing pill, 10 strengthening essence pills and 1 strand of ice heart jade. Self-discipline is not only a habit but also an attitude, which is also a shortcoming of cultivating a body that is not good at communicating. But the boy finds this task very strange, but he has to complete it anyway, so he goes to Shiyao and confesses, and he praises him very much. And he confesses his love by going to Shiyao for 99 consecutive days. But will Shiyao accept this boy's confession or not? So let's look ahead now. What happens after all? The story begins at Sea Pavilion Tianya, in Luo Peak. This is one of the main peaks of Sea Pavilion Tianya. Ing Luo Peak is full of female disciples. Although it is a beautiful scene in Tianya Sea Pavilion, usually due to the strict discipline of the master at the peak, the entire mountain exudes an aura of dignified and graceful temperament. But now something is different. Nowadays, even children in the city below the peak know that every day at the center of Tianya Sea Pavilion is, and at the same time, the group of Tianya Sea Pavilion disciples will gather together, even though, in fact, there are several activities at peak every day that can help students earn points for everyday life. But getting points seems to be less important than the daily encounters at Ing Luo Peak. And all the disciples are gathering in one place. And Shiyao happens to be there, as well as Li Dan. Both are looking at each other. And after seeing all this, all the disciples start talking among themselves about what is going to happen after this. And now Li Dan takes a deep breath and shouts loudly. Shiyao, do you know that for a long time I thought I was just glancing at the defense towers and the crystals in my eyes, but after seeing you, I only see you? And all the disciples become very happy when they listen to Li Dan's words. They cheer up Li Dan. But Shiyao is still calm, she is not saying anything. All the disciples say that Shiyao has been gone for 99 days, why are you not saying anything? But Shiyao is calm. Then after this, the scene shifts, and at another place, 2 masters are sitting and playing the game. In which the first master is the master of Taihua Peak, Tianzhen, and the second master is, master of Yueluo Peak, Zhu Yunyun. And they are talking about Li Dan and Shiyao. And Master Tianzhen says, it's a small matter of falling in love, but if it broke my disciples' trust because of it, it would be quite a headache. And in response, Master Zhu says, your little student made a public confession for 99 days straight, and you're still afraid that his confidence will fade? This persistence may exceed yours. Even if you are optimistic and persist for so long, you will end up empty. Whoever is afraid will suffer many blows, and after talking for a while, Master Zhu leaves. Then, after that, Master Zhu Yunyun approaches Shiyao. And there are also a lot of disciples in that place who want to hear Shiyao's answer. But Shiyao doesn't say anything, but she says to Li Dan, I will give you a satisfactory answer tomorrow. And saying this, she leaves from there. And all these things are being watched by Master Tianzhen from a distance. And at the same time, he is a little worried for Li Dan, as there hasn't been any progress yet. And then it's evening, and everyone's still looking at Li Dan. And talking about the same, now 99 days have been completed, and Li Dan's task has also been completed. And he takes a deep breath and calls the system. The system says congratulations to him, and the system tells him to persist for 99 days, 99 sentences every day, to confess to the goddess, recognized by everyone. Self-discipline task completed. Mission rewards: 1 pill of washing marrow, gu ben dan, 10 pieces, a bunch of ice. Jade. Self-discipline is not only a habit but also an attitude. This is also one of the shortcomings of cultivating hosts who are not good at communication. And upon receiving this notification, tears welled up in Li Dan's eyes. Because he was so upset, 99 confessions every day killed most of my brain cells. And Lu Shiyao was thinking in her mind that tomorrow she would definitely answer her confession. And then Li Dan tells his story. It was an ordinary night. I was in the middle of my day job. I'm an amateur cartoonist, and for that, my pay is very low. I had to do as much work as I could to make a living. Day after day. And finally, my body couldn't take it anymore. Now that I think about it, all I remember is the blackness in front of me and the pain in my chest. And so, my short life ended. It felt like a dream, and when I slowly opened my eyes, Li Dan's neck was in severe pain. And he also has a scar on his neck, and when he looks up, there is a rope tied to a tree. From this, we can understand that the previous master of that body tried to commit suicide. And at the same time, the system opens in front of Li Dan, who now chooses Li Dan as his master. And Li Dan is also happy because he has to live his life peacefully. And after this, Li Dan starts remembering some memories that belong to the original owner of that body. Li Dan is a dull man. And he doesn't talk much. There was almost no one to talk to. Maybe it's been a long time since he suffered from depression, and then on a dark, windy night, he's met with uncertainty. Finally, the time has come for Li Dan to confess to Lu Shiyao for 99 days. Now he is going to get the reward. And the first reward is 1 Shishue pill and 10 Guban pills. The Shishue pill is only rewarded for first place in the peak competitions. Take it to at least cultivate to break through the second level. The consolidation pill can stabilize the restless spiritual power after a breakthrough. Consolidate the foundation and cultivate the vitality. The most important thing is this ice heart jade bracelet to prevent emotional instability. And now Li Dan is ready to make a breakthrough. As Li Dan walks towards his home, Master Tianjin comes in front of him. After seeing whom Li Dan remembers, this is the leader of Taihua Peak, Tianjin. According to previous memories, even if had a weak cultivation foundation, slow advancement speed, and poor communication skills, Master Tianjin never gave up on me, even a little, and Master Tianjin says, "You know what the peaks say about me now?" No, it's the opposite. Everyone agrees with me and you. High praise. Your words of love, your persistence, your indifference, and even the suppression of other rivals in love never made you succumb. Instead, you became more and more courageous. Everyone praises the fact that I have good vision and can receive a 600-level apprentice like you. The master is proud of you. Go your own way and let others talk about it. Persevere, maybe tomorrow will be a success. What the hell am I talking about? 100 is a good number, go back and have a good rest. Tomorrow, Master will bring everyone to Taihua Peak to personally supervise the battle for you. Dress up handsomely. You are not bad looking. And Li Dan says thank you to Master Tianjin. And Master Tianjin is overjoyed. And his disciples take immense pride in Li Dan. But then Li Dan tells Master Tianjin that he will not go tomorrow. Master Tianjin is very shocked after hearing this, and Li Dan says, "I said I'm not going, I want to take a good rest for 2 days," and Master Tianjin is speechless. And after that, Li Dan comes home and starts cultivating. Just after taking the marrow washing pill, I suddenly felt a pure and strange energy emanating from the body, flowing through the limbs and bones. I feel refreshed physically and mentally, but I don't know about these 3 layers of condensate. How much can you break through with this pill? Then, the next day, Master Tianjin was getting very upset. He only thinks about Li Dan, and he is worried about what Master Zhu Yunyun would say to him. So that's why Master Tianjin himself goes to Li Dan's house to see him, and by the way, Master Tianjin was tensing up all night thinking about Li Dan. And as soon as he is about to open the door, a smell comes from inside. And the master thinks in his mind that, although it is smelly, it is accompanied by a fresh fragrance. According to the practice of broken love, he should have drunk a lot and vomited all over the floor. If I go in at this time, I will definitely embarrass him. Judging from his tone and state yesterday, he didn't want to worry anyone, but he looks down and out today. Losing the last bit of self-esteem will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then the scene shifts to Shiyao, which has already arrived at the place and is waiting for Li Dan. All the disciples are very surprised to see this thing. Shiyao has come here so early in the morning. And the disciples also want to know Shiyao's answer. And Shiyao is thinking in his mind, in spring on a small street south of town, I can only see plum blossom among the people. Among the 3,000 diseases in life besides old age, only love's sickness is incurable. This poem is my most memorable one. What is love? I can't believe it's possible for a man to be transformed. Even if the master doesn't force me, I plan to give him and myself a choice after listening to today's 99 love words. It's not a compromise, it's not sympathy, it's not a promise or a rejection, but I want to get to know him better. Come on, let me know more about you. To install Li Dan, Shiyao is impatiently waiting for Li Dan. But Li Dan is singing by a waterfall in the middle of the mountains. And he is drinking milk. He is overjoyed because he has made a breakthrough in level 6 of condensation, and then Li Dan receives a notification from the system, in which it is written that people depend on food, and a man who can cook will not have a bad character. A man who can cook will integrate love into every detail of his life. A new self-regulatory task received: chai, rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar tea, is also self-discipline. Make 3 meals a day for a month, each with a different attribute bonus. Mission accomplished will be presented with mystical gifts. And then Li Dan comes to Master Tianjin. And tell them that I want to learn cooking. And Li Dan says that I have so many delicious recipes that I want to learn to cook. For the 4 seniors, and Master Tianjin is overjoyed upon hearing this. And think in your mind, wait a minute, this guy hasn't given up yet. He's just shifted his mind. They say to grab a man, you have to grab his stomach, but the other way is to ground him. A man who can cook is the most attractive. And then the master also gets ready. But Master Tianjin says that you will not be able to cook and practice at the same time. But when Master Li Dan checks his cultivation, he is very surprised. Last night, the kid was breathing on 3 floors. Why was it all in one night? Is this what the legend says of the Great Enlightenment, the ultimate sublimation? Is it so mysterious? Let me see. The spirit in the veins is like a rushing river without a trace of floating. That's true. No, that's not true. It's good to stand up after breaking it in the morning when he noticed he was drinking on the 3rd floor in a row. Maybe all I see is his nirvana. But I can understand his desperation. But even so, he hasn't given up yet, and he's regained his original self. It looks like he likes that girl. It's in his bones and in his soul. And then the scene shifts to Shiyao, who is still awaiting Li Dan's arrival. And while waiting, it is already night, and seeing this, the disciples talk among themselves. It's such a shame. There won't be any more Li Dan Jin Yen in the future. Yeah, that's love. It can change or destroy a person. Then Zhu Yunyun comes to that place and tells Shiyao. Uncle Tian says that he has given up. And after hearing this, Shiyao says, it's good to give up. I don't have to memorize names anymore. If I don't have to bear any burden, then, Master, I'm going to train myself. The bottleneck has loosened recently. And Zhu Yunyun also says, all right, let's calm down. Blame him for not being lucky. Lu Shiyao then walks away, smiling. And Zhu Yunyun feels that Li Dan's love may have failed. And the next day, Li Dan starts learning to cook. And Xia Wanrong is helping him with this work, and she first teaches Li Dan to control the fire. But it is a bit difficult for Li Dan, and then she further says, Master has told me everything about you, but I just want to tell you that love is a very useless thing. So you concentrate on learning to cook so that you will be able to do something in your life, and Li Dan says that I just have to learn for 1 month. And then a man comes down from above, whose name is Chen Hai, who is the third brother, and the third brother tells him that many beautiful girls have come down the mountain, who are from Yinglu Peak, and tells the third brother Li Dan that you also came down with me to meet the girls, but Li Dan doesn't want to go because he has to learn cooking. But on the third brother's insistence, Li Dan also goes under the mountain, where there are many beautiful girls, and all these girls know everything about Li Dan, and the girls say that if I were in Lu Shiyao's place, I would have said yes to your love long ago. But it's okay, there's still time. If you want, I'll give you lots of love. And listening to all these things, Li Dan's mind is getting spoiled. So he leaves that place. Then, after this third brother is going somewhere, a man comes behind him and stops the third brother, and this man's name is Ling Feng, who is the fourth brother, and these two talk like this. Then after that, there are scene shifts towards Li Dan. Li Dan now begins to learn cooking and is very good at slicing vegetables, as well as developing cooking skill attributes. And after a lot of hard work, Li Dan manages to make a dish that looks great and tastes great too. And Shiyao is also happy that Li Dan has finally made a dish. The dish is yet to be tasted, but before that, Shiyao senses something and uses her power to draw third brother and fourth brother inside as they were overhearing her talk. And Li Dan is also surprised to see what these two are doing here. Shiyao asks both of them. After all, what are you doing here at this time? After hearing this, both of them get scared, and in response, they say that we have come here to test Li Dan's dish. And after this, the scene shifts. Here, two girls are talking among themselves about how Li Dan has started learning to cook, but the dish he makes is very bad. And Lu Shiyao is also listening to all these things. After this, Lu Shiyao comes to her home and takes a bath in the bathroom. After taking a bath, Lu Shiyao comes to the window, but she is very sad. She is thinking in her mind, an unprecedented irritation. I'm already at 9 layers of condensation. Condensed qi breaks through Huayuan. Sometimes, it only takes 1 or 2 hours. But it's been 5 days, I can't calm down, and the breakthrough is nowhere in sight. Am I really in love with him? After this, Li Dan cleans crayfish at night and sings. And someone is keeping an eye on Li Dan from afar, and it is Lu Shiyao. It turns out the rumors are true. He's actually cooking. It's so late, and he's still working hard. He's singing alone to pass the loneliness. Then Lu Shiyao sits on the roof of Li Dan's house, watching Li Dan. She tries to understand what Li Dan is doing. And when she sees the crayfish, her facial reaction changes. She thinks the crayfish is a red-colored insect. And she thinks, can anyone eat this thing? What, Li Dan wants to poison me by feeding it, but Li Dan starts cooking in his own style. And seeing this, Lu Shiyao is also very surprised. She feels that Li Dan has made a lot of progress in a few days. And at the same time, Lu Shiyao smells the dish Li Dan is preparing, and it smells wonderful. And finally, Li Dan's spicy crayfish is ready, and after that, Li Dan picks up a crayfish and tastes it. Li Dan likes it very much, and Lu Shiyao is watching all this sitting on the roof. He also wants to taste the spicy crayfish once. It's a red-backed insect. Why? Why does it smell so good? This rich garlic flavor goes well with this meat flavor. Can red-backed worms taste this good? What the hell is going on? I'm about to lose my grip. And then Li Dan remembers something, that he wants wine. So he goes to the kitchen to get it. And Lu Shiyao thinks, what should I do now? So she secretly goes near the dish kept on the table and starts looking at that dish carefully. Lu Shiyao picks up one of the crayfish. She hesitates before tasting that dish, but when Lu Shiyao takes a bite of crayfish, she feels very good. It's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I've never had such a stretch of meat before. It is evident that this tender meat was made in a spicy soup, but it's not very spicy or greasy, it's more pure because the shell's package absorbs it. Like a river overflowing, the meat inside is covered with a secret seasoning that is too fragrant. It smells so good. Why did you allow me to eat such delicious food so late at night? And Lu Shiyao eats up all the crayfish one by one. With a secret spicy garlic sauce on your fingers and a lingering scent between your teeth. Is that why Li Dan picked his finger? I'm curious. Just then, Li Dan is coming with wine, and as soon as he looks in front, he screams because all the crayfish are over now. Li Dan can't figure out where his crayfish went. So he starts searching everywhere. And starts abusing the man who ate his crayfish. And when Lu Shiyao hears that Li Dan is badmouthing her, she gets very angry. But now Lu Shiyao continues from there, but as he leaves, Lu Shiyao says, but, I have to say, it's so tempting if he makes another tomorrow. I can't be as indifferent to words as I was to. But Li Dan, it's your first win. And the next day, Li Dan does cultivation in his house. He is also making very good progress, and after that, at night, Lu Shiyao goes to the dining hall to eat, takes the food, and sits at the table, but there are still some things going on in her mind. She is thinking, a day passed and he still didn't show up. But the spicy redback bug that night was very good. At least I'm really fond of it, and I'm super satisfied. Especially the feeling of having just taken a bite but being forced to stop, it can create a sense of dissatisfaction and longing. Even now, I still feel an irresistible desire. What is he doing? Even if there are some shortcomings, shouldn't it be enough after these few days? And then the third brother and the fourth brother come to that place. And they are talking about Li Dan and telling everyone that Li Dan is learning to cook. We tasted his food, but the food was very bad. Because of this, my stomach got upset. And Lu Shiyao was also secretly listening to all these things. And brother says, Li Dan is trying too hard to impress Lu Shiyao, he is just learning to cook. And Lu Shiyao is listening secretly. And getting a little nervous and thinking only of Li Dan, what an admirable man. Sure enough, is this the real him? I originally thought I had carried a lot of burdens due to his influence. I didn't expect him to be more bitter. No wonder he doesn't even rest at midnight, working alone in solitude and conducting experiments. Only a flickering light accompanies him. Well, let me tell you one thing. The third brother and fourth brother plan to make Lu Shiyao have feelings for Li Dan by talking nice things about him so that Lu Shiyao is impressed. And it works. And Lu Shiyao is about to say something when suddenly some people come there. And this guy's name is Bao Yue, and he's a junior disciple of Huizhao Peak, and he says, I am here this time to bring you surprises and benefits. Is it a competition to sign up for the new dishes in the kitchen? Is the kitchen at Huizhao Peak going to introduce new dishes? At Huizhao Peak, we are planning to hold a unique competition to select new dishes in 20 days' time. After this, Lu Shiyao is lost in thought, and she is still thinking about Li Dan. If he uses that spicy redback worm to participate, he will definitely be able to get a good ranking on the top list. But forget it, Huizhao Peak is not an easy thing to resist. I just don't know if he will participate. Also, the third brother and fourth brother think about Li Dan. If Li Dan participates in this cooking competition and wins, maybe he can impress Lu Shiyao. And both of them became very happy thinking about this. After this, the third and fourth brothers go to Li Dan and tell him all about the competition, and after hearing this, Li Dan thinks that after 20 days, the day before the competition, coincidentally, was when I finished my self-discipline task. At that time, I will become a skilled chef, and I still have the confidence to enter that competition. And Li Dan agrees to participate in the competition. Hearing this, both brothers become happy, but Li Dan says that today is a happy day, so you both must taste my newly made dish once. And hearing this, both of them get very tense because they feel that the food prepared by Li Dan is a bit bad. The scene then shifts to Shiyao, who is still thinking about Li Dan. As soon as the competition was announced, the number of people who went to Huozad Peak to register had already reached 1,600. There are tons of people coming in and out every day, but he still didn't show up today. What is he thinking? Did he really want to make spicy red worms for himself on competition day? No matter how old he was, he couldn't compete with those who came out to study at Huozao Peak. They have a unique fire control skill that makes the food more delicious. What will you not do? Should I go to Taihua Peak again? No, that's too impolite. Then, after this, the scene shifts. Sweat is falling from the faces of both the third brother and the fourth brother. They are very happy to eat the food prepared by Li Dan because Li Dan has made a very delicious dish, and till date, both of them have eaten so much tasty food in their lives. I had never eaten, and after that, time passed. One day before the competition, Taihua Peak. Bao Yue is standing at that place, and then his servant comes behind him and says that what you said has been done. Bao Yue becomes happy after hearing this. And now he starts going there. It has only one plan: Bao Yue wants to defeat Li Dan by any means. Now that Bao Yue reaches the place, Bao Yue sits down and forms a formation. So that his soul leaves his body and starts going towards Li Dan's house. As soon as he reaches Li Dan's house, he smells a very nice fragrance, which he smells and goes to Li Dan. Bao Yue wants to see what Li Dan is making, and maybe he has to taste that dish as well, and when Li Dan tastes that food, he likes it very much and becomes very happy, and as soon as he lifts the lid, a very bright light comes from the pot. It comes out, and when Bao Yue sees it, he is very surprised because that dish smelled before, but now it stinks. And after a while, his formation breaks down, and he starts vomiting. Bao Yue doesn't understand what Li Dan did. After all, what kind of useless food would he have made? But Li Dan has made snail noodles. And the smell of this dish is a bit strange, but its taste is very good. That's why everyone ends up eating the noodles very quickly. The system then tells Li Dan, and the system provides host talent reward heavenly food analysis. This skill will allow you to project how to make most dishes, analyze and make up for their deficiencies, and detect whether they are poisonous or not. Eating is the best self-consolation, only food and love can make you happy. And now Li Dan has the ability to tell everything about any food by touching it. And he touches snail noodles from beginning to end. Wow, I can present an image of making snail noodles right in my mind. The mysterious talent that I've been waiting for a month really didn't disappoint me. In my previous life, many people learned to cook from watching TV or after studying for a long time. More importantly, with this talent, you can look back at other people's cooking and add one more to your menu. For example, tomorrow's new dish competition is the perfect time to steal various food recipes. This talent is truly perfect. At least in the future, I won't be afraid of someone trying to poison me. This self-discipline system is amazing. Master Tianzhen is still a little tense about Li Dan. She is worried about Li Dan, so Xia says, "Why are you looking at Li Dan so tensely?" See, he is very happy, but Master Tianzhen says, wouldn't it be natural for him to be happy? Tomorrow was match day, and Shiyao would come. I think he's imagining that pretty lady who saw him cooking at a competition. Master Tianzhen feels like this, but we all know he is drowning in happiness because of the self-discipline system. After that, Master Tianzhen leaves. And Li Dan also says bye to Master Tianzhen. After this, the third and fourth brothers come to Li Dan and give him a gift, saying, "Li Dan, little 5, people say go help someone who gives you food, even though this help is not as big as other people. This is a present from me and your third brother. 2 high-quality green spirit pills can help you break through the cultivation realm and recover your spiritual strength. And Li Dan also takes that gift and says, "Don't worry, I will definitely win tomorrow's competition." And finally, the day of competition has arrived, and many people are coming towards the competition area to watch the competition, and now Li Dan has also reached that place, but he was finding it a bit difficult to find the competition area because the way had gone astray. But now he has arrived, and Master Zhu Yunyun and Master Tian Zhen have also come to watch the competition. And the competition area is full, now everyone is waiting for the competition to start, and Lu Shiyao has also arrived at the place. Who is still thinking about Li Dan? Have you done it or not? Will he come to this place? Where is he, after all? All this is going on in Lu Shiyao's mind, as well as the fact that there are 5 masters in that place who are from the Supreme Elder Sea Pavilion, Tianyao. After this, the announcer says that before the competition started, Bao Yuntian, as the master of Huizhao Peak, as well as our organizer, was invited to give a speech to everyone. But the master says that I do not want to give any speeches. Alright, let's leave it at that. Some of the 5 supreme elders know, and some have given. They don't want to be introduced too much. And they are here only to taste the dish. After this, the announcer calls all the participants into the arena, and all the participants come to the arena, and one of them is also Bao Yue, and he says that the day I was waiting for has come. And he looks at Lu Shiyao but is thinking about Lu Shiyao, Li Dan. And Bao says Yue. Lu Shiyao, just wait, whatever your image, I will bring it back. But he wonders why Li Dan has not come yet. And then someone says that Li Dan has arrived. And when he sees him there, Li Dan is coming from there and says, I was going to be late, but I came. But there are many people here, this is the first time that I have seen so many people in one place. And when Zhu Yunyun sees Li Dan, she says that Master Tian Zhen, your disciple, is not as simple as it looks. His body has become very light, his spiritual energy has become very clear, and his power has increased very much. Has he just breakthrough? So the master thinks in his mind that he is indeed eligible to obtain the legendary supreme sublimation of enlightenment. And his third brother also thinks that he has drink potion. And Lu Shiyao thinks he didn't leave his training while doing cooking training, he also did training until his mill and his cultural realm increased. How many unexpected things did he do? But when Li Dan looks at the crowd, he feels that someone is watching him, and it is Lu Shiyao, but Li Dan does not understand. Who is this? And I think that as soon as I entered the area, I felt someone keep looking at me with heavy eyes, it was her. Lu Shiyao and Li Dan are being seen by each other. Li Dan does not understand who this girl is. But we are told this. Right, this guy accepted the self-discipline task on the first day and started it. He has been doing a love confession to Lu Shiyao for 99 days, and even to this day, he has not thought, and Li Dan thinks in his mind, who is this woman, and why is she always looking at me? Is she sick? We can understand that, whenever, Lu Shiyao used to be very far away. She used to be on another mountain. So that Li Dan Lu could not see Shiyao. And Li Dan does not even know how Lu Shiyao looks. But he went to him for 99 days and did a campaign, and after this, Li Dan is ready to cook, then he starts cutting the vegetable. And Bao Yue is looking at all this from a distance and thinks in his mind, this guy. Is he going to make that shit again? With a broken kitchen knife like that? I don't know why, but I always feel that his posture does not look like someone cooking. This inexplicable d'avoue feeling, but when Li Dan looks towards Bao Yue, he feels strange and thinks, gay. What's wrong? Why does that guy keep looking at me? Have I ever made him angry? Alright, forget it. Now I'll just put the vegetables next to the main event. This is an item that I carefully crafted with spirit beans, our main ingredient. And after this, when the third and fourth brothers see that Li Dan is making tofu, they become very happy. And also, a lot of people are cheering. And after this, a girl is making a very strange recipe that looks very dangerous. So that's why the girl is blown away with explosives. And this shows us that explosives have been installed everywhere in this arena. If anyone tries to break the rule, he will be blown away by the explosion. And now the explosion of the explosive starts everywhere, but Li Dan and Bao Yue are still in this competition. And preparing your dish. And Li Dan thinks in his mind that Mapo tofu is one of the famous traditional dishes in Sichuan. Mapo tofu has the characteristics of a dense, spicy, hot aroma, crisp, soft, fresh, and lively taste, which is an Asia word. This time, the dish will be based on this tofu ingredient. And what I want to do is make popular food for some people. Dish for the banquet. That's right, every event that is cheerful and full of hospitality cauldron dishes right, I have eaten this dish many times, and it is very suitable for cauldron dishes. It helped me remember the countries where I had to go on a journey. But someone is watching Li Dan, and he sees that Li Dan is easily making his dish, and he feels bad after seeing this, so he moves forward to attack Li Dan, but Li Dan saves him of every his attacks and just makes him unconscious with his same attack. And after seeing this, everyone is surprised. But a boy says that I will destroy Li Dan. And he leaves a strange bird in his book. And the bird attacks Li Dan, but Li Dan is avoiding the attack of that bird. And then he forwards his dish so that the bird falls into it. But he runs away after saving his life. Li Dan's dish is saved. And after seeing this, Bao Yue becomes a little depressed. But now Li Dan is back to his work. And starts making the dish. And Bao Yue thinks that if Li Dan keeps doing this like this, it will prepare the dish before me. And Li Dan continues his work and first prepares his dish. Given this, Bao Yue also prepares his dish very quickly. And the announcer says that you two people have prepared your dish. So now all the masters are called to test this dish. And the first dish is Bao Yue, and the second is Li Dan. Then Master Tianjin comes. And check that dish, and think in your mind, why did you take so much from little Bao's dish and give me Li Dan dish a bit more? Sister, you need to lose weight and cut carbs. Look at this tofu. I don't even eat the noodles you have, you are so favorite, your disciple. This is delicious, I did not protect him. And another master also tests. Brother Tian, you are too much, as a peak master, you have no sense of justice, Bao Yue 10 points, Li Dan 6 points. And after seeing this master, Zhu Yunyan thinks, these two people are too shameless, they have no sense of justice at all, and Lu Shiyao when Li Dan testens the dish of Li Dan, so that's why he didn't make spicy redbacks for the completion of this. My whole tongue feels savory, soft and chewy. Very spicy and very refreshing. The tofu is soft and tender and flows down the stomach, it's hot and spicy but has an extraordinary army. It feels like my whole body is bathed in the scorching sun, as Elite has stated. This is the feeling of happiness. But both Bao Yue and Li Dan have equal scores.